In tonight's news edition, the Prime Minister urges Amman municipal officials to ensure a fair distribution of services in all the capital's districts. As the violence in Syria continues to take more lives, China calls for greater support of the international envoy's efforts. And New York's subway system will partially open. The U.S. East Coast struggles to recover after Superstorm Sandy. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King has asked the government to take the necessary legal measures to release 6 detainees. The measures are the first step towards issuing a private amnesty for the 6 men from Amman, Zarqa and Salt. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour urged Amman municipal officials to ensure that all the capital's districts have their fair share of services. He said enhanced services would create a better sense of belonging by citizens to the capital city. Mansour also stressed sound planning during a meeting at the Greater Amman municipality with head of the council, Abdul Halim Kilani, and members attended by the ministers of Finance, Municipal Affairs, and Water and Irrigation. The Prime Minister said the financial situation in the kingdom and the municipality's indebtedness requires a careful implementation of projects and competent and fair management of funds. He stressed the need to improve the tax collection system, including real estate deficits estimated at over 200 million dinars. Mansour was briefed on challenges facing the municipality as well as its future plans and projects.
Amman is the treasure at the heart of the kingdom, where tourists, citizens and expatriates come to see its bright image, which we cherish and want to keep. We want sound planning with services extended to all parts of the capital. So in order to keep and protect this image, which we are proud of, it's inevitable to spend money on its plans, renovations, expansion and organization to keep its brightness. We will do all that with utmost care, taking into consideration that the financial situation the kingdom is passing through. We will ensure that every piastre will spend for the right purpose. We will support you and your projects and will be tuned to your demands at the Council of Ministers, where you will see the government side for the success of your work.
A police officer was shot in a car chase in the southern city of Amman and died of his wounds in hospital. Lieutenant Ayman Miqdadi of the criminal police was shot in an exchange of fire with an armed group who were in a car with no number plates. The gunmen with automatic rifles and machine guns opened fire at the police after they managed to stop their speeding car. A police statement said officers were able to identify the owner of the car and pledged that the armed men will be referred to justice. The officer was laid to rest in his hometown of Irbid, where senior public security department officers joined his funeral. 446 Syrian refugees crossed into Jordan last night, fleeing the ongoing violence in their country. Spokesman for Syrian Refugees Affairs, Inmar al-Hmoud, said the Jordanian government had taken all the necessary measures to help refugees and offer them the services they need. Jordan, Hmoud added, is coordinating with international organizations to help refugees meet their needs, noting that the kingdom will continue its humanitarian role towards the displaced Syrians. Meanwhile, 66 refugees yesterday left the Zaatri refugee camp and returned home. At least 6 people were killed in a bomb blast in a suburb of the Syrian capital. Syrian warplanes bombed rebel targets with renewed intensity. Amid the deadly violence, China's foreign ministry called on all sides in the Syrian conflict to stop the fighting immediately and take steps towards forming a transitional government. Asya Hattab is keeping track of the situation.
The violence in Syria continues to take more lives. A bomb killed at least 6 people near a Shiite shrine in a suburb of the Syrian capital, Damascus. The latest bombing came days after the end of a widely ignored 4-day truce between President Bashar al-Assad's forces and rebels. 13 people were also wounded in the explosion in the Sayyida Zainab district. Airstrikes also hit buildings near a mosque in Ghouta, an eastern suburb of Damascus, as shown in this video posted on the internet. of Douma also came under similar attacks, with aircraft shelling hitting a building that sent plumes of smoke rising over the city. The violence is being stepped up, so is diplomacy. China's Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi said the world should act with greater urgency to support the mediation efforts of the UN Arab League peace envoy, Lakhdar Brahimi, as the situation is worsening. Welcoming Brahimi, Yang hailed his efforts in handling the Syria issue. While the envoy told Yang he hoped that Beijing could play an active role in solving the crisis of the war-torn country, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said Beijing could continue to work for a peaceful solution to the Syrian crisis.
China has been playing an important and active role in politically solving the Syria issue. We will continue to make active efforts together with the international community in finding a just, peaceful and proper solution to the Syria issue.
Russia, together with China, has vetoed 3 UN resolutions aimed at pressuring the Syrian regime to end violence. But Beijing has been keen to urge the Syrian government to talk to the opposition and take steps to meet demands for political change. It has said a transitional government should be formed. Asya Hattab for the news at 10.
The Israeli anti-settlement Peace Now group said Jewish settlers have set up 2 new unauthorized outposts in the occupied West Bank. Hagat Ofran, who monitors settlement activity for Peace Now, said about 8 prefabricated homes were placed near the settlement of Zofim and another 5 outside the settlement of Tolman. She said the 2 new sites were connected to power and water lines serving the nearby settlements, contrary to previous cases in which outposts erected without Israeli government permission have been self-sustaining. An Israeli Defense Ministry official said demolition orders had been issued against the dozen or so temporary structures, but he declined to say when they might be removed. The United Nations deemed all Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank as illegal. Amid the stepped-up settlement activity, a centrist politician called on Palestinians to accept some West Bank settlements. Yair Lapid, head of the Yesh Atid centrist party, who could be a key player in Israel's parliament after elections, was making a bid for right-wing voters. Lapid said that only granting Palestinians their own state could end the conflict, but settlement blocks would stay within Israeli borders.
The Palestinians will have to recognize that reality has changed since 1967, and the settlement blocks Ariel, Ma'ale Adumim and Gush Etzion will stay within Israeli borders.
French President François Hollande and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeated calls on Iran to stop atomic program. Following Netanyahu's first meeting with Hollande since the French socialist became president, the 2 men told a news conference that United Nations sanctions are having an impact on Iran's economy, but not enough. Tehran said its nuclear program is peaceful, but the international community says it could have military purposes. Netanyahu has made a number of veiled threats to attack Iran's nuclear program. In an interview with French magazine Paris Match, Netanyahu said a strike not worsen regional tensions, as many critics have warned. Libya's General National Congress approved new Prime Minister Ali Zaidan's proposed government lineup. A televised vote showed that 105 Congress members voted in favor of the lineup. The Congress is made up of 200 members, but not all were present. As Congress met amid tight security, Libyan security forces briefly fired shots in the air to disperse a crowd of about 100 protesters outside the building. Zaidan presented a coalition cabinet drawn from liberal and Islamist parties to the National Congress, which had rejected his predecessor's cabinet lineup. The assembly met yesterday to vote, but its session was postponed after protesters, angry with some of the nominations, stormed its headquarters. Zaidan needed Congress approval to take office. His transitional government will focus on restoring security in the country, where many militias have yet to disarm. Royal Jordanian has postponed flights to New York since yesterday after massive storm Sandy wreaked havoc across the U.S. Northeast. RJ said the national carrier had not decided when to resume flights and was keeping passengers posted on the new schedules. In areas that bore the brunt of the storm, millions of Americans are struggling to resume normal lives. Businesses, markets, and airports reopened despite grim projections of power and mass transit outages lasting several more days. On the region's recovery efforts and the storm's aftermath, Lays Shanqiti has more.
The U.S. Northeast crawls back to normal. Millions are struggling to recover from Superstorm Sandy that crippled transportation, knocked out power for millions, and killed at least 45 people in 9 states. Massive storm surge and rain that caused epic flooding. More than 8.2 million homes and businesses are without electricity across several states as trees toppled by fierce winds tore down power lines. It will take days or weeks to recover from the massive power and mass transit outages. Financial markets reopened with the ringing of the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and backed buses took residents back to work with the subway system halted after seawater flooded its tunnels.
It was a sight to see. I actually was driving on the FDR and I had to slow down and pull over because I really wanted to look at this skyline from standing. You look uptown and you see lights, and you look downtown and it's completely black. It was something that I was driving in with a partner of mine, and I said, I don't think we're ever going to see something like this again.
John F. Kennedy and Newark airports reopened with limited service after thousands of flights were cancelled, leaving travelers stuck for days. New York's LaGuardia Airport, the third of the airports that serve the nation's busiest airspace, was flooded and remained closed. The storm killed 27 people in New York State, including 22 in New York City and 6 in New Jersey. 7 other states reported fatalities. One disaster modeling company said Sandy may have caused up to $15 billion in insured losses. With 6 days to go before the November 6 elections, President Barack Obama will visit storm-ravaged areas of the New Jersey shore where Sandy made landfall.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to all the families who've lost loved ones. Unfortunately, there are fatalities as a consequence of Hurricane Sandy, and it's not clear that we've counted up all the fatalities at this point. And obviously, this is something that is heartbreaking for the entire nation.
Remnants of the storm churned slowly over Pennsylvania. The National Weather Service said winter storms were in effect from southwestern Pennsylvania to eastern Tennessee. In western Virginia, a blizzard warning remains in effect with at least 2 feet of snow already on the ground. And in the mountains of North Carolina, over a foot of snow was expected in some areas. At a time when the leaves are normally just beginning to fall, Sandy had parts of Kentucky and southwestern Virginia looking like a winter wonderland. Lays Shanqiti for the News at 10.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel promised fairness in talks on Turkey's accession to the European Union. But she said after talks with Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, she opposed full EU membership and favored a privileged partnership instead. Erdogan blamed France for the fact that his country is no longer invited to EU summits despite having status as accession candidate. But he praised Germany for having supported Turkey under the leadership of former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, as well as Merkel in the top job. The EU's executive arm says Turkey does not yet meet required standards on human rights and freedom of speech for it to gain membership. A joyous Kabul crowd invaded the boxing ring to celebrate a local victory in Afghanistan's first professional men's boxing match after German-born Hamid Rahimi beat Tanzanian Saeed Mbelwa in 7 rounds. Rahimi took the belt on a technical knockout, which ended a contest of few cleanly landed punches. The 29-year-old overcame Mbelwa to win the World Boxing Organization's Intercontinental Middleweight belt in the fight for peace. The match was staged in a huge tent, normally used for national gatherings of tribal elders, but was rigged with lights and pumping sound systems for the event. U.S. tennis champions Venus and Serena Williams took part in a coaching session with young children in Lagos during their trip to Nigeria. The sisters are in the West African nation to back a women's rights organization campaign called Breaking the Mold. Serena and Venus will raise a fund dinner to stage an exhibition tennis match against each other, lending their fame to an initiative designed to inspire women across Africa. Now over to the weather forecast. Chilly tonight in most parts of the kingdom with possible scattered showers and northeasterly moderate winds. Tomorrow it will be warm with possible scattered showers in eastern areas. Winds will be southeasterly moderate, turning dusty in desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a hot day tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. The Prime Minister urges Amman municipal officials to ensure a fair distribution of services in all the capital's districts. As the violence in Syria continues to take more lives, China calls for greater support of the international envoy's efforts. And New York's subway system will partially open as the U.S. East Coast struggles to recover after Superstorm Sandy. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.